Hello, it's Justin from the Tech Train here, and I'm going to show you today how to make a self-marking test in Microsoft Word. This is a kind of closed procedure exercise, and you can see what I've got here is a section of text with words missing. What the idea is for the student to look through this and click on these drop-down menus. They can look through these menus, choose whichever is the appropriate word for that particular sentence. Let's choose assess here, and we'll just choose a couple of others quickly there. And when they've finished going through the test, they can click the mark test button at the bottom like this, and it will immediately give them their score, which they can then print off. So let's show you how to create this self-marking test in Microsoft Word. So here I've got a plain document here with the text in that I want the students to be able to read, and what I'm going to have to do is to include a bit of coding, a bit of programming code into Microsoft Word. Now, don't let that put you off if you've never done any kind of coding at all ever. If you have done coding, this is dead easy. If you haven't done coding, this is still dead easy. Might be a really good opportunity to try a little bit of very simple coding just to get started. So bear with me, this is not difficult. I'm going to go right through from the very beginning through to the completed thing so you can see every single stage really clearly. So first of all, you'll need a document obviously with some text in it, just here. The next thing that you'll need is the Developer tab at the top. Now, if you don't have the Developer tab, all you need to do is, on any tab, just find a blank area of the toolbar, or the ribbon, right-click on it and choose Customize the ribbon. Now, on the right-hand side here, you'll have a list of all of the possible ribbons, and if you don't have the Developer tab, then that one obviously will be blank. That tick box will be empty. So just simply click in that box, click OK, and you'll have the Developer toolbar. So what we need to do is to replace some of these words with drop-down menus. Let's replace the word assess over here, for example. So what I'm going to do is highlight the word assess, and then I'm going to come over to the controls section of the developer ribbon. In the controls section here, you'll find these little buttons, and the bottom right one says Legacy Tools. And if you click on that and come down to the bottom here, bottom left, you've got Combo Box, ActiveX Control. There are modern list boxes, but they don't work in quite the same way, and they won't work for what we want to do here. So come right to the bottom left of the legacy forms and choose Combo Box. Click on that, and that will then pop in a combo box exactly where you want the word to be. Let's delete the word, so we don't want that in straight after it, of course. And we're just going to click on that box once to select it. Make sure that you're in design mode at the top here. That can toggle on and off. If we click design mode, then we can select this drop-down list. If we're not in design mode, then when we click on the drop-down list, it works just as a drop-down list, although there's nothing in it at the moment, of course. So click on design mode, make sure you can click on and select your drop-down list, and then go down to properties. And what we're going to do, again, this is purely to make life easier for us later on and to keep things simple, is we're going to name this combo box whatever word was the correct one at that point. So this was the word assess. So in the properties panel here, which you can scroll up and down, at the very top you'll see it says name, and at the moment it says combo box 1. That's just the default name for that particular drop down list. So I'm going to replace that with a word that I want to have, the correct word in this place. So once I've done that, I can just bring this little list over to the left hand side a bit out of the way. What I need to do now is carry on and replace the other words that I want to test the students on with menus. So let's do another one. Let's take the word planning here. I want to replace the word planning with a drop-down list. So I highlight the word planning, come to the controls section, click on this bottom right one. It looks like a sort of a toolbox or something. I think it's supposed to be a toolbox with a little screwdriver after it, or a dark grey sort of bag or box or something. Anyway, click on that, bottom left corner, combo box. Click that. That inserts the combo box at the right location. Let's delete the word planning that comes straight after it, and then click on the combo box, and on the left hand side here in the properties panel, replace the name again with the word that we want to test, planning. I'm going to do just one more, but obviously you can do as many of these as you want. I'm going to replace the word immediate with another drop down list. So let's go back up here, having selected the word, choose combo box. Then I'm going to delete the word immediate that comes after it, click on the combo box and name it immediate. There we go. So that's it. We've inserted our 3 menus, and if we come out of design mode, you can see how each of these drop down lists works just like a drop down list, but of course there's nothing in it at the moment, and that's what we have to do next. We have to populate each of these drop down boxes with the words that include the correct one and the possible alternatives, the wrong alternatives. So what we're going to do here is to do 2 things. First of all, we need to go into the code window. On the left hand side of the developer tab, you'll find a button that says Visual Basic. So just simply click on that, and that'll open up the code window. If you move this down, you'll see that your document is still behind it and your code window is in front of it. I'll just resize this code window so that you can see both at the same time. Now, within Microsoft Word, what we have is the ability to have a set of instructions, a block of instructions to the computer that it will carry out the moment the document is opened. So what we need to do is write the word sub. Sub just is short for subroutine. It just simply tells the computer, I'm starting a little block of code. I'm starting a little group of instructions, and we're going to call this document underscore open, and then press enter. Now when you do press enter, you'll see you get 2 brackets immediately after it, and you get the words end sub underneath. And you should also notice that the words sub and end and then sub again are in blue. That's only significant in as much as you can prove to yourself that this is working. The computer recognizes what you've written. Now, any instructions that you now type will be immediately carried out as soon as this document is open. And what we have to do is to populate our combo boxes, our list boxes. Now, the easiest way of doing this is to come back to your document. You can either move the code window off to the right like I've done there, or you can close it, because you can just as easily open it again with the Visual Basic button there. You'll also see in the tooltip just underneath it that you can press Alt and F11 as well to bring up this code window. I'm just going to move that off to the right hand side for a moment. I've clicked on design mode so that I can select my toolboxes, and I'm going to click on the first one and bring up the properties panel again. Now, the reason I've done this is simply so that I can remind myself what each of the words or the names of the combo boxes is called. So if I've clicked on this first one, I can see that the name of it is assess. So what I have to do now in the code window is write the word assess, which is the name of that list box, then a dot, and then I have to, you can either scroll down here, you can see add item as the second item there, or I can write that out. So add item, we're adding an item to our list. And then we have to open brackets and put in speech marks whatever the word is that we want to write. Now, the way I would recommend you do this for speed, especially if you're new to coding, is to write out the correct word. And then close your speech marks and close your brackets. Now, what we can do is highlight that line of code. I've pressed Control-C to copy it, or you can right-click and copy, whichever. And then I'm just going to paste that 3 more times. So basically what I'm doing is I'm adding 4 words to my drop-down list. Now, at the moment, those 4 words are all the same. They're the correct one. So now what I want to do is to replace 3 of them with wrong words, with alternative answers which would be incorrect. So I'm going to choose, the third one is going to be my correct one. So I'm going to leave that alone. That will continue to say the word assess. I'm going to change the first one there to teach. I'm going to change the second word there to learn. And I'm going to change the fourth one to pass. There we are, whatever. So what that code will do is to add those 4 words, teach, learn, assess and pass, to this first drop-down list here. Now, if we were to come out of design mode and you were to click on that, you'll find it's empty. And you might think at that point, oh, my code's not working. But don't forget that the code only runs, these instructions only run when you open the document. Okay, so these won't be visible until we save the document, we close the document, and then we reopen it. So don't worry if you think, oh, it's not working. Now what we have to do is the same thing for the other 2 menus. And of course you can have as many of these menus as you want in your document. So again, what I'm going to do is click on design mode so that I can click on these menus. I can click on this menu and go to properties, just so I can remind myself what was the word at this point. And this is why we named our drop-down lists with the correct words. It makes it much easier to remember later on. Excuse me. So this one is planning, so I can copy that or just type it out. And in my code window, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So in this same section, so between the sub document open and the end sub, so between those 2 instructions, I'm going to write out the next block of code, which again is planning.addItem, and in speech marks write the word planning. And then again, I can simply copy that, and you don't have to have 4 words. You could have, 2 words. You can have 6 words. It really doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you. So now what I'm going to do is choose which one of these is correct. I'm going to go for the second one this time. So I'm going to change the first one to delivering, then marking, and then teaching. There we go. And then we've got one more drop-down list. So this time I'm going to close the code window just to show you the alternative way of doing it. Then I'm going to click on this menu, my last one, and again look over in the properties panel. Remember, if you happen to have closed that properties panel, then you can just open it either by clicking on the properties button here in the control, or you can right click on your menu and again go to properties, brings up the same list. So in the name section, I see this one is called immediate. So then what I'm going to do is click on the Visual Basic button on the left-hand side of my ribbon. And inside this same subroutine, I'm going to write immediate.addItem, immediate. And this time I'm going to copy it 3 times and have the last one as the correct answer. So I'm going to choose the first 3. So I'm going to change that to some, correct, and what should we call it? My mind has completely gone blank now for alternative answers. Well, let's call it blank then. So there we are. I've put in now my the items which will appear in the drop-down list. Now, of course, when the student opens the document, these lists will be populated with the words we've just put in those list blocks there. What you might want to do is to put a word in here or a symbol in here to prompt the student to click and select something. So how do we do that? Well, there's 2 lines of code we could put in here. This is optional. You don't have to do this. This is just adding another layer of interest, of convenience. So you can either skip the next minute and just sort of go and have a couple of sips of coffee or something, or bear with me because it's not difficult, it's just simply something which adds a little layer. What I'm going to do for this first list here is I'm going to add another item to the list, but at the top, so assess.addItem, and then in brackets and speech marks I'm just going to put a question mark here, but you could put click or choose or select or answer, whatever you want to do in there, put some hyphens in, whatever you would like to display in that list, so it doesn't just look like it's blank, it's a prompt of some kind. Now, the other thing that we'll probably want to do is to make sure that when this document is opened, these items are put into the list box, but the list box is, if you like, already clicked and an item selected, so that the first item is already selected, it is already displayed. So to do that, we can write assess dot, and again you can scroll down here and find, it's going to be near the bottom, I think. Where are we? I completely lost where it is now, bear with me. Trying to show you all the different, there we are, list index, there we are, that was the one. So it's about halfway down, so list index. Now what's an index? An index is a number given to each item in the list. Now you'd expect the first item in the list to be 1, but this is computers, and so they work slightly differently from humans, which means that the index, or the number of the first item in a list, is 0. They start counting from 0. So we select list index equals 0. Now what that will do is, when the document is opened, so document open, these items here are added to the list, and then the first item in the list at position 0, this item here, is selected. So that when the student opens the document, what they will see is this list box here will contain a question mark, or whatever prompt you've put in there. So you see, it's not strictly necessary, but it does add a nice little bit of convenience. So what I'm going to do is the same thing here. I'm going to add a second or a first item at the top of this list. Same with this list box. So I'm going to put a question mark at the top, and then I'm going to simply copy this line of code that says assess.listIndex, paste it under each of these lists, but of course I'm going to have to change the name of the list. So that's not assess, that's planning, and that's not assess, that's immediate. So there we are, that's my code. And you don't have to use those 2 extra lines, it's just a little bit of extra convenience. Now at this point, if you wanted to stop, you could do. What I'm going to do is just show you how to save this first of all. So to save this, what you'll need to do is to go to File, Save As, and then I'm going to go to my desktop for this. And it doesn't matter what you call it particularly, but what is really important is the Save As type. Now you'll see that the Save As type that I've chosen there is Word Macro Enabled Document. Normally, of course, you simply have Word document, but the code we've put in is what we call macros, which are brief, short snippets of code. And if we don't choose this, then that code will be blocked, it won't run, and you'll probably get an error message of some kind as well. So what we'll do is make sure that we've selected Word Macro Enabled Document, and then we can click Save. So that's how to save your document. Now what I'm going to do, you'll see again, if I come out of design mode, none of these drop-down lists currently show me any of the words. What I'm going to do is close this document, and then I'm going to reopen the document, and this is what the student will see. Now as I've reopened the document, all that code that we wrote in the sub-document open block of code has happened. And you can see that's happened because each of my drop-down lists now has a question mark in it, which tells us straight away that all those items that we added to our list box have in fact been added. More than that, the extra line of code we put for list index has selected the first item in our list. And if I click on these drop-down lists, you'll see all the words which I wanted to choose are in there. Now if you wanted to, you could simply leave it at that. So the student selects all of these, prints off their document, you'll see those words they've chosen, and you can mark it. So you could simply use this code as that. However, if you want it to be self-marking, we will need a little bit of extra code. So let's show you now how to add the extra code so that the Microsoft Word document marks the document itself. So we have to go back to Developer, we're going to go back into Design Mode, and we'll need to add another couple of what we call controls. These drop-down lists here, these objects, if you like, that we've put in, are what we call controls. We have to add two more. A button, which is the button the student will click in order to mark the test, and also a label, which will display their score. So first of all, what we need to do, I'm going to click down here at the bottom somewhere underneath my test. I'm going to go back up to the Developer tab, into the Controls section, click on this Legacy Controls, and the button is immediately after the list box that we've been using. So there on the bottom left is our combo box, immediately after it is our command button. Click on that and it puts a button straight in there for you. Now again, if you click on the button, in design mode of course, so you can select the button, you can then go to Properties and we don't need to rename the button, so leave the name as it is, that doesn't matter too much. But what you might want to look at is the caption property just here, because the caption is whatever writing appears on the button. So I'm going to change this from simply saying Command Button 1 to Mark Test. Now that's quite small writing, and of course what you might want to do for this, and indeed for your drop-down lists, is to change the font, to increase the font slightly. It's the same for all controls. If I click on this button, on the left-hand side of this Properties panel again, I have Font. And I can either double-click the word Font, or I can click on this little ellipsis, this little ... button on the right-hand side, brings up this little font panel, and I can now choose the font that I want. I can choose the style, I can choose the size. Let's just increase that to size 14, for example. Now at that point, that's made that quite large. I might just need to make my button a bit bigger. Again, that's as simple as it would be if you were making a shape a little bigger. Just click the corner or the edges and resize it. So that's our button. Now we also need to have a label. A label will display our score. And again, we can come to the Save Little drop-down list here. And our label is actually the third item in this, excuse me, this ActiveX control section here. So it's just a big capital A, and it says label if you hover the mouse over it. So I'm going to click underneath my button. I'm going to click on the Legacy button and choose Label. And again, I'll probably want to make this label a bit bigger. So I'm going to make that a bit higher and a bit wider. I'm also going to increase the font. So I'm going to make that nice and big. We'll make that size 23 perhaps. And I'm also wanting to right align it. You'll see the label down here. I've right aligned the whole label. That's easy. I'll just click on that and I choose right align, just as I would if it was ordinary text. But the writing inside the label is currently left aligned, and we can change that in the properties section as well. You'll see down here near the bottom there's an option for text align, and we can just simply use this drop down list to choose either align left, align center, or align right. There we go. One other thing probably that I'll want to do here as well in the label, if I just bring up the properties panel for that as well, is to remove the words label 1 inside it. We don't want that to be displayed. So this label is going to be completely blank until the test is marked. How do we change that? Well, it's the caption property. So there's caption, there's label 1. I'm just going to delete that. Do make sure when you are changing the writing on a button or in a label that you are using the caption property and not name property. Leave the name alone, just change the caption. Right, there we are. So now my label is, as far as the student's concerned, completely invisible. They can't see that. So I have my list boxes, they're named, I know what those are. I have my button and I have my label. We're good to go now with the final bit of code. So what I'm going to do now is to double click this mark button. Double-clicking the mark button does two things. First of all, it opens up the code window, but secondly, perhaps more importantly, it creates a new subroutine, a new block of code. This code will happen when the document is opened, but the code inside these two lines that say private sub command button 1 click, and then the end sub, this block of code that we're going to write will only be carried out when we click the button. Apologies if you're familiar with code, but I'm hoping that this tutorial will encourage a few people who have never really played around with code to have a go at it, so bear with me. Right, what are we doing here? Well, first of all, we need to have what we call a variable. Think of it like a little box in which we can keep our score. We need to keep a running total of what our score is. So what we're going to do is write the word dim, which sounds like thick, and we're going to call it, I don't know, well, let's call it score. So dim score. So we've created a little place in the computer's memory called score, like a little box with a label on it called score, and as we go through each of our list boxes, seeing whether or not the student's chosen the correct answer or not, we will either update what's in that score box or leave it alone. And at the end, we'll have a final look inside that score box and see what we've got. Now, to begin with, we need to make sure that score equals 0. So we're starting off with a 0 score. And then we need to go through each of our list boxes. Now, you can see down here our list boxes, we can see our names. Our first list box is called Assess, our second is called Planning, our third is called Immediate. So what I'm going to do is now ask a question. I want to know whether the Assess list box equals the word assess. And again, you remember that I suggested that you change the name of each list box so that it matched what the correct answer was. This is where it becomes really easy for you now to see what the correct answer is for each individual list box. So the Assess list box should say Assess, Planning should say Planning, and so on. So this is why it makes sense to do it that way. So the question I'm going to ask is, if assess.text, so that means if the text that's displayed in our Assess list box equals the word assess, put the word in speech marks, then what do? Well, on the next line, what we're going to do is say that our score equals whatever the score is now, plus 1. And then we end that question, end if. So that's it, 3 lines of code, and that has now asked the question, is our Assess list box equal to the word assess? If it is, our score goes up by 1, otherwise we just leave it. And we're simply going to do the same thing for each of our list boxes. So if planning.text equals the word planning, then on a new line, score equals whatever the score is now, plus 1. Don't forget your end if. And if you wanted to, if you've got lots of these list boxes, you can simply copy this block of code, paste it, and then just change whatever the name of the list box is, and of course match up the word that it should read. Now, at the end of doing all of that, basically we are at the point where our score, that little box labelled score in the computer's memory, now does contain the final score, whatever it might be. So if I've got them all right, the score will equal 3. If I've got them all wrong, it'll still equal 0. We need to display that now, so we can display that in our label. So once we've done all the marking, we can say, right, label 1, which you'll remember was the name of our label, we didn't change that, and it's the caption, sorry, the text. No, it is the caption, sorry. So it's label1.caption. The VBA, this form of the programming language, is a bit of an older version to the VB.NET language, which some of you may be familiar with, and they updated it from caption to text. Ignore me if that made no sense at all. Some of you will know what I'm on about and why I got confused then for a second. So it's label1.caption, there is no text on this one, equals, and we want to display some writing to the student. So we can either simply say it equals the score, and what that will do is display the number 0, 1, 2 or 3, whatever it is at this point, in that label at the bottom of their test. So we could simply do that. I think it would be nicer if we put maybe some words and perhaps said how much the score was out of. So what I'm going to do is say label1.caption equals, and then in speech marks I'm going to write you scored, and then a space before the number. Then I'm going to close the text section of this and say, and add to that little bit of information, whatever the score is. So now it's going to say you scored, space, and then the number. I can go further and say and then put a / and a 3 because I have 3 questions, so the score is out of 3. So label is going to say you scored, space, and then whatever our score is, and then a / 3 or /10 or / whatever your score is out of. So however many of these list boxes you've got. And that's it. So I'm going to close the codes window here. I'm going to save my document and I'm going to close that. And now I'm going to open it again as though I were a student. So everything is refreshed. There we are. And I'm now going to go through this and select. So a closed procedure exercise can help too. And this was assess, so let's choose that. Blah, blah, blah. Subsequent, this was planning. And then this final one here was immediate. And then if I click the mark test, you'll see at the bottom there, you scored 3 out of 3. Now I could go back and change one of these. Let's change a couple of these to wrong answers. And then if I click mark test, you'll see that this label updates to show me now I've only scored 1 out of 3. And then of course the student can either have one go at this, they can have multiple goes at this, and then they can print this off and this score will be included in the printed version. Now if you've only got 3 questions like I've got here, then the potential is the student could go through here and select different combinations, try and increase their score. Well, you might be happy with that. But of course if you've got more than 3, if you've got 10, 15, 20, then obviously the students are unlikely to be going back very much and changing their options to see if they can increase their score. They may have a little bit of time, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. So there we are. That's a self-marking test in Microsoft Word using a little bit of simple code. I hope you found that useful. I hope you found that interesting. If this is your first ever adventure into using code, then fantastic. Congratulations. I really hope that that was helpful to you. And if it was and you're interested in this whole idea, excuse me, please do have a look at my other videos because I do have a number of videos that do include code in either Microsoft Word or in PowerPoint, and it does add a lot. It really does add quite a bit to what you can do with these programs. So if you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, please do leave them in the comments section below. I do regularly go through all the comments and respond to those. If you found it useful, please give the video a like, give it a thumbs up, that'd be brilliant. And why not share it? If you have your own teachers at school that you think might find this useful, share it, please do that. If you are not a subscriber yet, why the heck not? Please click the subscribe button, that little button down there, that red one. There it is, just down there, go and click it. Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.